A racist woman insulted a black man on a plane, assuming he was beneath her. Little did she know, he was a renowned astronaut. What followed left her in utter regret. Stay with us to witness a powerful story of prejudice, realization, and redemption. Subscribe to Unfolded Chapters for more stories that challenge stereotypes and inspire change. The boarding process for Flight 297 from New York to Houston was chaotic, as usual. Passengers bumped into each other, jostling for overhead bin space. Flight attendants did their best to guide the growing crowd while maintaining forced smiles. Among the passengers was Dr. Elias Grant, a black man in his early 40s. He wore a simple outfit, jeans and a dark sweater, and carried a small backpack. His calm demeanor and confident posture were the marks of someone used in navigating busy environments. Elias made his way to his seat in row 16 by the window and settled in. He opened a folder containing a journal article on advanced astrophysics, a topic that deeply fascinated him. Despite being one of NASA's most decorated astronauts and physicists, Elias preferred a low profile. He'd recently returned from a science conference where he had delivered a keynote address to a packed audience. Now, all he wanted was a peaceful flight home. Meanwhile, Margaret Wilson, a white woman in her late 50s with perfectly styled hair and a designer handbag, walked down the aisle. Her sharp eyes scanned the passengers with an air of superiority. Margaret prided herself on her social status and believed in appearances above all else. When she reached row 16 and saw Elias sitting by the window, her expression hardened. She didn't say a word, but let out a loud sigh, making her displeasure evident. With a theatrical glance at the overhead bins, she muttered, "No space for my bag." As usual, Elias noticed her frustration and immediately stood up. "Let me help you with that," he offered politely, reaching for her bag. Margaret stiffened and pulled the bag closer. "I've got it," she snapped, brushing past him to squeeze into her seat. Once settled, she muttered, "These flights really need better standards." Elias, choosing not to react, returned to his journal article. But Margaret wasn't one to let things go. Her eyes fell on the technical paper he was reading, and she raised an eyebrow. "Reading that?" she asked, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Looks a bit advanced for someone like you." Elias glanced at her briefly, then nodded. "Yes, it's fascinating," he said with a polite smile before returning to his work. Margaret smirked. "Fascinating, huh? Well, I suppose everyone's entitled to try." Her words were loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. A man across the aisle glanced at Elias sympathetically, but no one spoke up. Margaret noticed the attention and seemed to revel in it, as if performing for an audience. The cabin grew quieter as passengers began to sense the tension. Some looked away, uncomfortable, while others discreetly pulled out their phones, ready to record the unfolding drama. Elias took a deep breath, his mind replaying her words. He thought about the countless times he had faced such prejudice. His eyes drifted to a young black boy sitting a few rows ahead, watching the exchange intently. If I stay silent, what message am I sending to him? Margaret muttered another insult under her breath, this time clearly directed at Elias. That was the final straw. Straightening his posture, Elias turned to her, his expression calm but firm. "Ma'am," he said in a steady voice, "I think it's time we had a conversation." Margaret blinked, caught off guard by his tone. The cabin fell silent as passengers stopped what they were doing to listen. "You don't know me," Elias continued, "but you've already decided everything about me based on your assumptions. Let me correct a few of them." Reaching into his backpack, Elias pulled out his NASA identification badge and slid it across the tray table toward her. "Dr. Elias Grant," he said. "Astronaut. Astrophysicist. And yes, I did go to college, several, in fact." Margaret's face turned ashen. She picked up the badge with trembling hands, her mouth opening and closing as she struggled to find words. Nearby passengers gasped audibly. The murmurs began immediately. Did he just say astronaut? One passenger whispered. A flight attendant approached with a professional but respectful tone. Dr. Grant, she said, it's an honor to have you on board. Is everything all right? Elias nodded, offering a faint smile. Yes, everything's fine now. The applause started softly, but quickly spread through the cabin. Passengers clapped, some even cheering. Margaret shrank into her seat, her earlier arrogance replaced with visible shame. Elias met her gaze one last time. The problem isn't that you didn't know who I am. The problem is that you didn't think before making assumptions. Margaret looked down, unable to meet his eyes. The next day, Margaret was scrolling through her phone when a headline stopped her cold. NASA astronaut Dr. Elias Grant handles in-flight racism with grace. The article detailed Elias's accomplishments, but the attached video was what shook her the most. The footage of the incident had gone viral, with thousands of comments condemning her behavior. Margaret stared at the screen, overwhelmed by guilt and regret. Her face and name were now associated with public disgrace. But amidst the backlash, one comment stood out. This is a lesson for all of us: never judge someone by their appearance. Did this story leave you thinking about the power of respect and kindness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Unfolded Chapters and press the bell icon for more stories that challenge stereotypes and inspire change.